Hi everyone, welcome to the MrpTech podcast. This is episode 149. My name is Matt, and this is the weekly podcast discussing everyday tech for everyday people. As I get into this week's episode is going to be a little bit controversial, and I am curious what your thoughts are going to be. So I look forward to discussing today's topic. But before we get into that, there's a few things that I wanted to talk about with all of you. And one of them being that I have recently made some updates to mrptechreviews.com. Now, last week I talked about how I have a Patreon page set up. It's patreon.com/mrptech. And to be honest with all of you, I've never really liked the way Patreon worked. It's easy to post things as a provider for patrons, but I feel like I've never been able to give enough through Patreon. And what I did this weekend, over the long weekend, is came up with a sort of member area for MRP Tech Reviews. Now, the way that I'd like to do this, it's not really ready to go yet, but I wanted to show some of you and talk to you guys all about it. Basically, the way we're going to work this is you can either become a Patreon supporter, or you can go to my website, mrptechreviews.com, hit the donate button. Anybody who makes a monthly donation of $3 or more a month will get access to these member pages. And so the way I've got it set up, I've got a member videos area in which this week will be the first week that I'm releasing a enhanced video version of the podcast for supporters. Also, in that members only area, I've got the MRP Tech vlog that I've started working on. It's sort of a random video section. It consists of homemade videos wherever I feel like talking about something. If something comes to mind, I post it there. One of the things that has kind of been fun in Discord is posting some of my hiking adventures there. I posted some hiking videos. I've got the amateur radio space station contact videos there as well. My creation sort of workflow for the free software song. I'm also going to add photos and behind the scenes information, and occasionally I'd like to do some contests as well for all member supporters. So if you haven't seen the new mrptechreviews.com website, check it out. There is a sign up portion if you decide to make a donation. Sign up, click the login button and register. And then once I see that a donation has been made, then I'll give you access to the website. So it's just in the very beginning stages at this point. And I look forward to growing it for all of the supporters of this show. So once again, you can either become a patron on Patreon or just by clicking the PayPal button on my website. Either way, I'll give you access to the member support. Now, over the last week, since May 23rd, a lot of the pages that I follow have been talking about the Starlink project. If you're not familiar with the Starlink project, Wikipedia basically tells me that Starlink is a satellite constellation deployment project underway by the SpaceX company, and it aims to develop a low-cost, high-performance satellite system for space-based internet communications globally. And SpaceX also plans to sell these satellites for military, scientific, exploratory purposes, and I would imagine educational uses as well. Now, their plan is to deploy nearly 12,000 satellites by the mid-2020s. And from what I read, these satellites will be in a very low orbit, and they are only going to last a few years before they have a planned deorbit period where they will burn up in the atmosphere. So this has been talked about for a really long time now, and last week the first 60 satellites were launched on a Falcon 9 Heavy. Now, Falcon 9, the Falcon 9 rocket, not the Heavy. This was the first time that these satellites were deployed, and almost immediately, news began to break around the world about this, what has become known as the Starlink train, because you could see all 60 satellites in a row tracking on orbit across the sky, going about 17,000 miles an hour. These were very bright and noticed by people all over the world. Most people understood what it was. Other people not sure what it was looked into it and realized it was this recent launch that happened. And it sort of looked like, if you ever gone out and watched the space station glide across the sky at night, it sort of looked like that, but a trail of 60 satellites in a row, sort of in bursts. Some of them were spread out, some of them were closer together. And immediately, my first thought, I had saw this posted on a few Facebook pages, and shortly thereafter, I actually got a link posted by Door to Door Geek in our Discord room. And I didn't really think a whole lot of it at first because I know it had just been launched. And similar to Dragon, you can sometimes watch the Dragon capsule chasing the space station if you catch it at the right time. And it's very bright in the sky. But then I went and watched the video of this and was absolutely blown away on how bright these things were in the sky. And then it dawned on me that in the very near future, there could be 2,500 or 3,000 of these in the sky. And what would that do to the sky at this point in time? Now, one thought that I had is I'm from a relatively dark area. The night skies are pretty dark. Once you get out of the sort of smaller cities that are around where I am, the night sky can be absolutely stunning. And if we're talking 12,000 of these globally, and they're this bright, they're going to absolutely destroy the night sky as it is today. Now, the thought behind that is many people are amateur astronomers. Many people, let's say somebody living in Montana, away from urban development, have a much different perspective of the night sky than somebody who lives in New York City. So they're used to sort of the ancient view of the night sky at this point in time. Now, if you think back, if you're a stargazer at all, go back 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. Going back to the late 90s, it was not uncommon to see a satellite tracking across the sky. If you stay out long enough, you'll see a satellite tracking across the sky. It's not uncommon. They're not very bright. They are almost unnoticeable to a lot of people who have never looked up before. And go back now only 10 years, and you will notice more satellites in the sky, to the point now where it only takes a few minutes to look up and see a satellite tracking across the sky if you know where to look. Again, the ratio we're talking about between a satellite and Earth is unbelievably unbalanced. So Earth is so much more bigger than just a single satellite. And Elon Musk has said that there are approximately 4,900 satellites here in orbit currently. 1,000 of them are probably operational at this point. Many of them are and will deorbit eventually. But if you want to think about it, adding up to 12,000 more just by one company is pretty unprecedented. And it's a reasonable concern to talk about what these satellites will do to the night sky. It is not the type of concern that should be just taken lightly. I think it's a serious discussion that needs to be had about the brightness of these satellites. Now, I have read that immediately after launch, Elon Musk contacted the Starlink project and immediately started talking to everyone about what they can do to mitigate this, how they can make the satellites less reflective going on in the future. So they're already taking a proactive approach to this to make them less distracting. And when I first read that, I was kind of reassured that they're taking the right steps to make progress on this. But here's a quote from Twitter, Elon, just a few days ago, just yesterday actually. There are already 4,900 satellites in orbit, which people notice 0% of the time. Starlink won't be seen by anyone unless looking very carefully and will have zero impact on advancements in astronomy. We need to move telescopes to orbit anyway. Atmospheric attenuation is terrible. Now, first of all, many of you know on the show, I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. I support Tesla. I support SpaceX. I support all of his projects, the Boring Company, whatever you want to talk about, Hyperloop, all these different things I support, and I'll drink the Kool-Aid every day when it comes to that stuff. But when you say people notice these satellites 0% of the time, that's not true. There are amateur astronomers out there, or anyone really interested in looking up at night, could see these satellites flying across pretty easily. So, I read all this stuff about how bright these satellites were. I started getting concerned, and I'm not really one to freak out over this stuff. But with 60 satellites flying in a row, the first thing that I did is I actually went to the SpaceX fan page on Facebook, where there's over 43,000 people, I believe, at this point in time. And there was many people just slamming this down immediately. What's this going to do to the night sky? The sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And I said, could somebody please provide me with a few links to go read this? What are these satellites going to do when they finally reach their orbit? Are they going to be this close? Are they going to be spread out? And I really wanted to learn before I judged these satellites and how bright they are currently. So what I did is, over time, I started to learn a lot about the way that these things are made up. And yes, when you launch something, when you launch it, it's going to follow a trajectory. And over the first week and a half, it's probably not going to be in its proper location. So the satellites are going to have to burn. They're going to have to maneuver in orbit to get to their sort of final destination, so to speak. So we're in the first week still of this project. I mean, today's recording is May 28th. It only launched on last Thursday, the 23rd. So what I did is I wanted to go and take a look at this myself. There are many different opinions on the night sky I've learned over the last few weeks. And I learned about a new project called the International Dark Sky Association, which works to protect the night skies for the present and future generations. Now, mostly in the past, they've dealt with light pollution from the ground. And boy, that's a hot topic between a lot of people. And the idea is, with each parking lot put up or building and, night lights being needed around properties to protect them. Urban areas grow, they get brighter, and eventually you don't see the stars up in the sky as much. You don't get to see the Milky Way as clear as we once could. Go back 200 years, the night sky was much different than it is now. That's not the topic that I want to talk about. That is a concerning topic, and some people will justify that. Some people will say, well, do you turn your lights on at night when you're in your house? And go down a rabbit hole of questions about how much you use light at night. That's not the topic here. The topic here is what we have currently and the amount of satellites by one company, and there are other companies that want to do this as well. And having all of these satellites move around, being very bright in the sky, that's concerning to me. So one of the things that I did is there's a website that I went to, and I will try to, it's n2yo.com. n2yo.com is a website where you can track satellites that are in the sky. And if you look for the Starlink project, you can actually follow the beehive, so to speak, of all of these different satellites. So last night, I went out and I noticed that they were passing about 9:30-ish, I believe, last night. And just down the road from my house, there's a big park. It's wide open. It's pretty dark. It's a great place to watch the space station fly overhead. And I went out and I wanted to see them. Now, when I went out, it was a little cloudy and it wasn't quite dark enough yet. But I had read that these satellites were going to be most visible at night. So I went out a few minutes before 9:30, waited in my car. Then I went outside and I looked in the southwest direction. It was supposed to be coming from the southwest going northeast. And it was still cloudy in that direction. So I didn't really know exactly where I should be looking. I looked up and I thought I saw something. I wasn't sure. But 10 minutes went by and I knew that I had missed them because of the clouds. So I almost gave up for the night. And then the website I was using sort of updated, and I found out they're in a 93-minute orbit and that they'd be back around 11 o'clock. So I stayed up late on a school night, being the big nerd that I am, to go track a satellite swarm, and went back to the park. And I went out at 11 o'clock. It was still a little cloudy. It was sort of like a haze where I could see stars, but it wasn't really clear. And all of a sudden I saw a bright flash. And was that it? I wasn't sure. It was in a cloud. And it was almost like when you look at a street light at night and you turn your eyes away and you still see the light. It was almost like that. And I thought at first that's what had happened. And then I sort of looked up farther straight up in the sky and I caught a satellite moving. It was very dim. And I was like, oh, there's a satellite. I wasn't sure if it was the Starlink satellites or not because it was the first one that I saw and I was expecting to see a whole line of them. So again, I'm putting this in relation to the space station. If you have ever seen the space station come into view, it starts off very dim, and then over time, it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And eventually, as it's flying overhead, the sun is reflecting off of it. It's very bright, and then it sort of dims out. So it's almost like a firefly in the sky, so to speak. So as I'm looking up, I see a very dim satellite flying overhead. And I think, cool, I saw a satellite. I wasn't sure if it was Starlink or not. But then shortly after, I saw another small flash coming from the west. And it was almost like a burn, like a very quick engine thrust or something. It could have been the sun reflecting off of it. It was less than a second. And then it was behind the clouds again. I couldn't see it. And this happened 4 or 5 more times, where it was flying over the sky, and as it went to the northeast, it was very dim. You couldn't see it at all. So much, much different than when you're looking at the videos online of the 60 satellites in a row traveling very bright in the sky. And I want to make everybody aware of that, just because it was my concern for a very long time. And from what I've read, these satellites will be most noticeable either in just before sunrise or just after sunset, when you're going to see them the most. Other than that, during the daytime, they won't be seen. During the nighttime, they're in the Earth's shadow and also will not be seen. So it's talking about a very, very slim time period where these are all going to be seen. So after seeing 4 or 5, possibly 6 of these in a row last night, my thought has sort of changed a little bit differently. And I can see where Elon Musk was saying this is not going to be like any other, this is just going to be exactly like any other satellite out there. There's 5,000 of them out there now. There's going to be more in the future, and this isn't really a big problem. I also read that when you see these things tracking, okay, if you think about 12,000 being deployed, that they're going to be about anywhere from 100 to 400 miles apart. And that's about 12 degrees in the sky in all directions. So there's going to be a lot of these up there moving around. And I do think the conversation needs to be had about how to make them less visible over time. But I don't think it's going to be as much of a concern as a lot of people are currently concerned. I can certainly understand what caused the big panic at first with how bright these were when they were first launched, because they were just as bright as the space station. And the pictures online do it justice. If you have seen these pictures of them flying across in the sky, they were very bright. As they move away from each other, as they get to their final destinations, they are going to be not as bright. So what can you do about it if you're concerned about it? You can find a local chapter of the International Dark Sky Association and voice your concerns there. And I'm sure people are on it already. But there's going to be only so much we can do, unfortunately. And needless to say, space-based internet has been around for a really long time. It's been 20 years. I remember my father, who was involved with the satellite TV business for a long time, had satellite internet in the mid-90s. And do we really need satellite internet at this point? I'm not really sure we do. Do we need global internet at this point? I'm not really sure we need it. I think its time has sort of passed. And I'd like to know what you think about it. You could let me know, and I'll read your review on the show. Send me what you think. Should we have a global satellite system at this point in time for internet? And I understand there's some benefits as far as areas that do not have internet currently. So there's a viewpoint there that we should take a look at. But really, when it comes down to it, I think this whole Starlink project may be too little too late. It's an interesting time for sure. And again, Elon Musk looking towards the future with this company. Is it the right decision? Who knows? I'd like to know what you think. Send me an email, mrptechreviews@gmail.com. That's going to do it for this week. If you want to check out other episodes, you can go to YouTube, search MRP Tech Reviews for my YouTube channel. All the shows are up there. You can also check them out at podnuts.com. Thanks to Door to Door Geek for posting this podcast on the Podnuts website. He does a lot of great work for me every single week. I appreciate it very much. Check out the other great shows on Podnuts as well. And stay tuned for the next few weeks as my new members page on MRP Tech Reviews starts to come together. And join us on Discord. The Discord chat server is always up and running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Lots of great topics on there. I'd love more interaction on the Discord server. We've got a great group of people. They're a lot of fun to check out and a lot of fun to check out what they're posting as far as topics or just what's going on in everyday life. Just a whole lot of fun every single day. So if you want to get more involved with the show, that's the way to do it. Thanks everybody for listening. We will see you next time.